we live in a time of madness. Some guys in Norway published a book of my jokes, just jokes from my books, and now MIT wants to reprint it as a coffee table book. So I said, what does it mean, coffee table book? I know, but I wanted them to be precise. And they told me it means you do nothing and you get royalties, because it would be an expensive coffee table book, of course. I said yes, but to cheat a little bit, I added some new obscene jokes, and they were so worried at MIT that they immediately consulted their lawyers, like, could we be prosecuted for, name it, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, all possible, because you will find there that wonderful legal joke, I like it. How can we be sure that, maybe you know it, I'm sorry, that Judas from the Bible did not sell Christ to the Romans? Well, whatever you say about Jews, they know the value of what they are selling. No Jew would sell a god for mere 30 silver coins or whatever. No, sorry, I always fall for this cheap stuff, But I heard a new...
Do you want me to sit next to you?
You mean to... I know what you want. To have some ball squeezer electric so that then you just press the button. You did not. But there is a nice one that I was told when I was in Moscow recently. It's a primitive one, you don't have to laugh, but what I like is that it's a Stalinist joke where you expect some political stuff, and it gets personal in a nice way. Personal means sexual. Like, there is a boring local communist cell meeting where one guy, local guy, is having a long report for 2-3 hours about political situation, and he looks around and sees in the middle of his boring speech that one guy there is half asleep, dozing off, and asks him, are you listening? What am I telling? Do you know who is, just a Russian name, who is Popov? The guy said, wait, no, I have no idea who is Popov. Well, the lecturer tells him, well, if you were to listen to my long report, you would have known who Popov is, no? And then, then the guy who was awakened asked him back, but do you know who, name another name, who Alexeyev is? And the lecturer says, no idea. And the guy said, well, if you were to give less talks here and stay more at home, you would have known that Alexeyev is a guy who is fucking your wife while you are giving boring talks here. Sorry, this is spirit for me. Now, a little bit more serious, nonetheless. What Stephen said before, it's unfortunately true. I counted on this, that this is a smaller circle, and I will really try to develop in these 3 days, today, Monday, Tuesday, a kind of with a little bit of repeating my old stuff, but basically nonetheless new stuff, a kind of introductory notes towards the notion of event and so on, why event. What I want to do is precisely to, not to criticize him, but to supplement my and our good friend Alain Badiou. And I talked with him, and we both came to the idea that, usually people misinterpret his notion of event as some big spectacular thing, shattering event, somehow opposed to small daily life, while I think that more and more today a true political event would be something that happens at our apparently most common, vulgar, everyday level. Like it's easy to do big meetings, 1 million people on a square, and as we learn from Greece, from Egypt, it's much more difficult to change things afterwards when things return to their normal run, to make a difference there. So, okay, let me now first recapitulate very briefly what I already often developed. In the sphere of philosophy, there are, I claim, 3 key philosophers only three in the entire Western thought. Plato, Descartes, Hegel. Why? A very simple negative proof. And again, Alain Badiou gave me this idea. Did you notice how each of the three occupies a unique position in the sense that no one wants to be a pure Platonist, Cartesian, Hegelian? Already for Plato, Michel Foucault mentioned somewhere that the entire history of Western philosophy can be defined as the history of rejections or criticisms of Plato. It begins immediately with Aristotle, you know, a more nominalist view, Stoicism, and so on and so on. Like, it's almost as if Western philosophy is defined by the impossibility of being a Platonist. You have to draw some kind of a distance. The same goes for Descartes. The entire modern philosophy is a history of critical rejections of Descartes, not to mention Hegel, who, in this negative way, defines the last 200 years. Just to give you a very brief, shortened recapitulation of my idea, for example, Plato. Here I refer to Alain Badiou's seminar on Plato. You can find it online from a couple of years ago, where he goes to 6 main anti-Platonic positions, even now, in the 20th century. First, we have the vitalist, anti-Platonism, Nietzsche, Bergson, Deleuze. The idea is that Plato deals with this gray, abstract sterility of ideas. What Plato misses is the real of life, becoming, and so on and so on. This idea of Plato's empty intellectualism, which ignores the vital force of life. Then we have the empiricist analytic critique of Plato. Plato believed in independent existence of ideas, but as Aristotle already knew, ideas don't exist independently of concrete particular things, and so on and so on. Then we have the Marxist anti-Platonism. Plato's idealism as the first reaction, class reaction to ancient Greek materialism. This unfortunate idea, propagated even unfortunately again by Lenin, that the couple of Plato and Aristotle is the first couple of idealism, materialism, like aristocratic, arrogant, ruling class, Plato versus more liberal, popular, whatever, nominalist, empiricist, Aristotle. I think repeat this every year here, that this is, for me, simply a ridiculous and, to put it in British way, empirically false statement. Just 2 things that I repeat all the time. A, if you know a little bit about Plato and Aristotle, you must know that whatever we can say against Plato, there is no place for slaves in Plato's Republic. While Aristotle has even a concept, slaves like talking tools, talking instruments, like ontologically even lower level. And point 2, a more beautiful one even, whatever you say against Plato, he explicitly states in his Republic that the subordinate position of women in the existing society is a historical contingency. In his ideal Republic, whatever goes for men goes for women and vice versa. Like, it's not part of the concept. On the other hand, Aristotle, as you probably know, provides even the ontological foundation for the male superiority. Like male versus masculine versus feminine principle is like form, active form versus passive matter, and so on and so on. Let's go on. Existential anti-Platonism. Plato subordinates singular existence, its uniqueness, to the universal. This point was developed mostly by Kierkegaard, like Socrates versus Christ. Socrates, universal wisdom, Christ, uniqueness of singular existence. Then we have Heideggerian anti-Platonism. You know, Plato as the key, as it were, fall, forgetfulness of forgetting the history of being, metaphysical obliteration of ontological difference, and finally, a democratic anti-Platonism, from Karl Popper to Hannah Arendt. The idea being that Plato, in his Republic, is the proto-totalitarian thinker, and that there is a straight line, as I think Terry Eagleton once mentioned, from Plato to NATO, like Western metaphysics. Okay, we know this. Then, things get funny. Now we'll try to be a little bit shorter. If you move to Descartes, it's almost the same matrix, as it were. We have Heideggerian anti-Cartesianism. You know, in Heidegger's deployment of history of Western metaphysics, Descartes stands for the final moment of metaphysical, how do you call it, nihilism or nihilism? I'm not so sure, but okay, whatever. Western nihilism, subjectivity, subject reducing all reality to objects opened up to imperialist domination, technological manipulation, and so on. Then we have ecological Cartesianism, even with Al Gore, who at least, you know, the ex-vice president, who at least had a little bit of feeling for Hegelian temporal paradoxes, because after he lost the Florida election against Bush, for some time I read this. He used to introduce himself as, I'm the guy who once was the future US president. Like this is at least some sense for temporality. So, among others, Al Gore claims this, that while in medieval times, humanity was still an integral element of the cosmic organic order, so we cannot simply exploit nature. We, humanity and nature, are part of natural hierarchic order. With the Cartesian dualism, it's we humans objectify, exploit nature, and there seems to be an argument for it. Namely, the great problem Descartes has in conceiving, in conceptualizing the status of living beings. Descartes basically has only space for res extensa, the extended material stuff, and res cogitans, the thinking substance. And so, where is life? Which is why many radical Cartesians simply try to prove, in a pretty cruel way, incidentally, that animals don't even have feelings. That, for example, I don't know, to be tastelessly vulgar, if you beat too harshly or squeeze some bones of a dog and dog appears to cry, that this is just like a metal scratching, whatever, squeezing, that it's not a proper feeling, it's purely a mechanical reaction. So, okay, then we have this ecological critique of Cartesianism. We have then the, which I think incidentally is not quite justified, it's much more complex. Then we have cognitivist rejection of Descartes. For example, maybe you know the best-selling book Antonio Damasio, Descartes' Error. The idea is that Descartes draws a strict line of distinction between pure, neutral, abstract thinking and animal feelings, passions, and so on. That he didn't see the unity of the two. I wouldn't, how should I put it, sell my mother into slavery to defend this thesis, because if you read the third great book by Descartes, Les Passions de l'âme, the passions of the soul, you can see it's much more complex. But okay, we have this line. Then we have the feminist claim. Descartes, apparently abstract cogito, but in reality, this cogito is, in reality, in actuality, the notion of subject by Descartes, although, again, apparently neutral, de facto privileges male features. Then we have the proponents of so-called linguistic turn, who claim that, up to Habermas, who claim that the Cartesian subject is monological.